Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, May the 13th, 2026, and today we are live to chat about whatever it is that you all want to chat about. So especially, but not limited to gardening. So let's do it. All right, beautiful Wednesday to you all. I hope everyone is doing well and that things are going well and that this live is actually working for the first time, which doesn't usually happen. So it seems to be going so far so good. So I'm happy about that. As you all come in, make sure to get your questions into the chat for Mike. Say hi to Mike. He loves that, and he does a lot of work for us. So send your thanks to him. He is standing by there in the chat, so he's gonna take any questions that you all have, gardening or otherwise, and text those to me. And then I will get to them, as they come in. And what we'll do is we will, as you do that, as you all come in and get your questions into the chat, what we'll do is I'll do a quick ad read, and then we will start those questions shortly after that. So first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over there at BCS America. If you're practicing no-till or low-till farming, you know that heavy equipment is often the enemy of your soil structure. That's where BCS two-wheeled tractors come in. Built for small farms, market gardens, and regenerative growers, BCS tractors give you the power to manage beds efficiently without unnecessary compaction. For the low or no-till grower, there are two attachments that change the game. The BCS Power Harrow stirs only the top 2-inch or 2 of soil to incorporate soil amendments and creates a perfect seed bed without soil inversion or pulling up weed seeds. Also, I use my Power Harrow to just run over cover crops. So they probably don't advertise that because it's not really what it's made for, but anyway. And when it's time to terminate cover crops, per their suggestion, a flail mower shreds organic matter into a beautiful nutrient-rich mulch right on top of the bed. To find a local dealer and see the full lineup of attachments designed for the way you farm, head to bcsamerica.com. That is bcsamerica.com. Huge shouts to them. One of our first advertisers, actually. I went up to them. This is like the grind, I guess, is when I first started the No-Till Market Garden podcast. I went up to the guys at BCS and I was like, hey, would you all be interested in, advertising with us? Because I do this like no-till farming thing. And they were like game, and it was super cool. They've been really, really cool to us, for what is it, like almost 8 years or something now. So 7 years. So big shouts to them. Really appreciate that. And that, helps us to keep this information free and open to everyone. So much appreciated. Again, as you all come in, get your questions into Mike and make sure to shout him out and say thank you for all of his work. And let us know how you're doing. How's stuff growing? Any good successes so far? Any failures? Let's see. I'll update you all on our like broccoli and Lacey Phacelia interplanting soon. That is going good in the parts where I put the Lacey Phacelia kind of thin, just a little bit, and not put any teff, so it doesn't have quite as much competition. But the places where I put it a little bit thicker, it's kind of just the Lacey Phacelia with some broccoli in it. So, lesson learned. I think next time when I'm trying that sort of undercropping with those particular varieties, I may wait a week or two, and then sow my sort of inner crop there, just like my cover crop. The idea is there for that one, but, maybe needs a little bit more work. But anyway, things are going well. It looks like we've got some questions coming in. Again, get those into Mike. Super chats will rise to the top, right? So I can't always get to all the questions in the roughly like hour I give myself for this. But I will try to get to as many as I can, and super chats we rise to the top as appreciation for supporting this work and keeping it free and open to anyone and everyone. So, all right, let's start out on the first one. It looks like at Willow and Sage Farms asks, how are you handling the influx of growers switching to no-till because of the lack of fertilizer available? I don't know. I hadn't really heard that. I think like maybe you're talking about like on a larger scale. I don't know that I'd heard people switching over to no-till for lack of fertilizer. I mean, I think that's maybe part of it. Maybe people are going to, use more organic techniques or more organic fertilizers. You're probably going to see more manure spreading in the fields. I always got really excited when I would see our neighbors, like our more conventional neighbors, at this old farm we lived at where we were surrounded by conventional farming, I always got really excited when they would start, when I would see them like go and clean out their pens and take them out with manure spreaders into their fields. And those fields always did awesome. Like you never saw those fields do better than when they put down that manure and that compost. So yeah, I mean, I hope that's part of it. You know, fuel prices, I think, will change some things. Fertilizer prices will change some things. You know, it's not my favorite catalyst for change. I wish people would, you know, do it because it matters to the soil, it matters to our health, it matters to the water, to not put chemicals on it, to our food, all those things. But, you know, a catalyst is a catalyst. And if it helps people to find, you know, options that are cheaper, that are more ecologically minded, that are better for their soil, better for their food, better for their production, I think that's great. You know, you may find some people at least come out of this like, hey, I actually like netted more money doing it this way. Even though maybe their yields were down a little bit or whatever, like they're like, oh, I spent less money. Yeah, why do I need these things? So I would imagine if you're a fertilizer company, you're probably like, I hope they don't discover that, which I hope they do. Good question though. And let's see, the next one is at Indica Dogo. Asks, our garden plot is already planted. Plants are coming up, but so is bindweed. We've been pulling behind the weeds, I guess, furiously, but it's hard to keep up. Any advice for staying on top of bindweed? Yeah, I mean, that's one we've luckily never had to deal with. I always say that we have its like wimpy cousin morning glory, which not the easiest weed in the world, but it's definitely not bindweed. Yeah, I mean, the big thing is you got to stay on top of it. You got to get those you know, the rhizomes as much as you can. There's really only so much you can do. The big recommendation that people make who have had to deal with bindweed is you have to tarp it for like a year to get rid of it. And I hate that. Like I hate that there's not a better option, but what people find when they mulch it or put like a compost mulch over top of it is oftentimes it's just more aggressive, or at least like equally aggressive. So, you know, unlike, let's say like one I compare it to is often, it's not the same and it's not as bad, I find, is Johnson grass. So like Johnson grass, when you mulch Johnson grass really heavily, especially with things like compost, or almost specifically with things like compost, it doesn't do as well. And I don't know if that's a change in that like fungal to bacterial ratio I've heard. I don't know if I buy that necessarily, but I do think maybe there's like a pH change, or it's just like not as aggressive enough to get through that compost. And then if it does, then the compost is really loose, so you can kind of easily pull those rhizomes. I don't think it's quite the same with bindweed, but maybe if you were to cover it with something like cardboard or really thick, you know, paper, and then compost or mulch over top of that, that may help at least slow it down. But really, yeah, it's a very, very smart and aggressive, you know, weed. And yeah, there's no easy answer there. You know, that's the one that most people suggest is just a year under tarp, and that will pretty much do the trick. And then you may still have to just stay on the cultivation really well. Yeah, it's a bummer. But you know, staying on top of it, I always say like plant something that you have to visit a lot and not something that you're going to forget. So like, I think the mistake people make in weedy patches is they often are like, okay, I'll put my potatoes there, or I'll put my sweet potatoes there, or I'll put my tomatoes there, or whatever. And the problem with that is that you end up never going to cultivate it or never visiting it enough, because it's just like kind of a set it and forget it plant. Whereas what I generally recommend is go to something that's going to be like a 50 to 60 day crop that's not like direct seeded. So something like lettuce, maybe even transplanted beets, or something like that you're going to cultivate it. You're going to keep it cultivated because you have to. You're going to harvest it. You're going to flip that bed. So all of that, constantly kind of keeping it in check. And then that way, once you've got all those crops out of there, then you've diminished its quality, its potential. So yeah, those are like that's kind of what I would recommend there. But yeah, tough weed. Sorry to hear that. At Mick, Tom, Carl, Marshall, Monteshua, that's quite the name, 25, don't want to forget that. How do you make tomatoes survive in this winter? I'm assuming you mean like the plants, like I don't really get them over winter. So what I do is, you know, we start our tomatoes in like January, February. It just depends on if I'm grafting them, if I'm not grafting them. I forget. I think I started them in January this year. And then I graft them, and that usually happens in February, March. And then they're in the greenhouse until, you know, like if I'm planting them in the field, I won't start those until March. But if I'm planting them in the field, they stay in the greenhouse till after that last chance of frost. So I just transplanted our main season, you know, first round of field tomatoes like 2 days ago. And our tunnel tomatoes, the ones that are going into like our high tunnel, Those go in on April 1st. So that's here in Kentucky Zone 6B. I don't know how relevant that is for everyone, but for us, that would be the equivalent of saying like, 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost is when they'd go in the tunnel. And even then, sometimes I have to cover them. I think, did I have to cover them this year? I feel like I did throw some cover over them one time early on after I transplanted them. And I want to say they actually went in a little earlier than normal, like maybe late March, but I'm not 100. I'd have to check my notes, but yeah, something like that. So if you're going to put them out early before your last chance of frost, like before your last like absolute chance of frost, you have to cover them, and you have to cover them with a pretty thick row cover. They'll go, they can survive if they've been in the ground a little while, like a patchy frost. But as soon as you get one of those hard frosts, like I saw a neighbor, they had put out their tomatoes probably like around Derby, which is common, like the first week of May. Not a good idea here because it's too risky. So I think they'd put theirs out right around Derby, and then we got hard frost. Was it Derby morning or like the next day? So the Kentucky Derby, obviously, that's like in Kentucky, we're always like, that's when you transplant your tomatoes after the Derby. But it's not, that's not a reliable, that's not weather, right? That's just like, tradition. But usually what I do is I check the 10-day forecast. And if there's anything even close to like low 40s, I'll hold off. So because we've had a hard frost here, we've had a freeze here on May 12th. And I'm just like, not doing that, not double covering everything in the field, in May. So that's what I'd prefer to not do. But you can. Cover's really the only option there. Let me get a quick drink of water here. Keep your questions coming. Make sure to put them in the chat, and then Mike will get them to me. And if you do a super chat, we will make sure those rise to the top. We appreciate that. It keeps this work going and free and open to the public, which we want. We want to, make sure that there is a no paywall option out there. Rosewater Farm said, question about marketing fresh garlic. Do you still have to peel the garlic cloves out when you eat it? Do you store it in the fridge? How does the flavor compare to cured garlic? Okay, so fresh garlic is my favorite thing in the world. It's garlic before it's cured. So basically, if I went out to the field right now, it's almost there. I actually just harvested scapes this morning for an account. So I smell amazing, but I went out, but if I was to go out there now and pull up a garlic, it would basically look like garlic, but it would look without the paper on it, without what we call the paper, you would see like kind of the differentiated cloves. You could see where they are, where they're forming. But when you first pull it out, it's just like one large garlic juicy mass. And it's the best flavor wise. It's light. It's not quite as intense. It's not quite as spicy, super juicy. I mean, huge yield, right? Like it's the heaviest it's going to be. It doesn't quite have all those bitter notes yet. So it's really fun. Like you just take a whole clove of that and squeeze it onto anything. So what we'll do, in terms of storage, if you want it to retain that for longer, then you would pop that into the fridge, like, so it doesn't cure. As soon as it's out, it's going to start that curing process. So it'll slowly paper up. So like if you just set fresh garlic gently, if you bang it around, it'll bruise. But if you set it gently, like on a countertop, it'll slowly, just cure. It'll form that paper. And they asked, do you still have to peel the garlic cloves out when you eat it? Sorta, but not really. Like you kind of like, as it differentiates more, yes, but you kind of just like pop it out. Or honestly, you could just take a knife. If it's super, super fresh, and you could just cut like a quarter of it, like almost like quartering an apple. You just cut a quarter of it off and you chop that whole thing up and you can pretty much use all of it. You'll be able to tell if it's too papered. Like the knife won't really cut through it the same. So you just pull that out. It's not a big deal. But yeah, you can eat like 100% of it for a little while, depending on the variety. So let's see, there was another question in there. Do you store it in the fridge? I do. Yeah. Just to keep it from curing, and then it'll eventually cure anyway. And then, yeah, the flavor's just like bright and juicy and not quite as spicy or bitter. Now, there's value to those bitter notes, right? Like there is a nutrient value there. It's just kind of a different crop. That doesn't mean it's like less nutritious. It just means it's a different nutritious. And I love it. I mean, I think like I will take it and squeeze it over fresh pasta. Hannah and I eat a lot of garlic. Like we would, if garlic disappeared off the planet, we would probably just be like, we're not farming anymore. It's not worth it. We love garlic. Like that's like our favorite crop. That and peppers, sweet peppers and garlic. Those are my two. If I was going to be like a monoculture duoculture farmer, yeah, it would be peppers and garlic. Those are like the two things I love growing the most. But yeah, I think that that may cover it. I hope so. Thank you. Good question. At Barbara Lee asks, do you know of a motor-free flail mower? How about horse-drawn? There are such things. There are also like, what's kind of a flail motor-free flail mowers, those like sort of push mowers that they used to mow lawns with that are super dangerous. Those are fun. What do they call those? They're just like reel mowers or whatever. And you just like push mower and you push it and it spins. That's an option. There are versions of that are horse drawn. I don't know about like the medium scale. Like if there's like a sort of one that you could pull behind it, that you could physically pull without a horse or anything like that. But yeah, they exist. That, and maybe there's room for inventing something like that as the technology improves. And there's lots of. I'm going to do an episode on wheel hose next week. I think next week. But yeah, just the idea of like having. That using your body force to be able to, maybe move a motor like that. Like maybe there is an option for that. But they used to mow lawns that way. They're very clever. And I don't know how well it would really like flail, but it definitely would like chop stuff and lay it down. At Kuba G95 asks, do you use any control on pests on sweet corn? We don't have any spray or biodefense for micro growers here in central EU. Thank you, James G. Let's see. I mean, not really. You could use BT it depends on the pest. Like if you're talking about worms, then you can use BTK for like the corn earworm. There's also those little beetles. I don't know if there's really a treatment for those. The best things that I've found is grow it early, right? The earlier you grow it, the more likely you are to beat some of those pests. Like your later varieties tend to have more of those, eggs in them, I guess, from the, stuff flying around, the moth or whatever that lays the cornworm eggs. And then, the beetles are a little bit tougher, but, good fertility will help you with that if it can get to maturity really fast and have all of its defenses. Those are important, but like sweet corn's difficult. Like we talked about this week, it's a high nutrient needing, it's very needy crop in that way. And it also, it's just, if you're going to go out there to a crop that doesn't make you a lot of money and spray it 3 times, every 3 days or whatever with BTK, like you're breaking even, right? Like it's just the labor there is going to be hard to justify with the expense of the BT and with the, all that entails. And, the equipment upkeep or anything like that. Like ultimately, like you're just not making any money. Now, if it's just for yourself, for me, I don't care. Like I don't know, bugs. If I find a bug on my sweet corn, I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's the best sweet corn. Why wouldn't it eat it? But yeah, it's usually just like a little nibble at the top. And there's not, some good, good fertility will help. It's hard though, because like you're not wanting to irrigate it and, you don't want to use a ton of fertility on it because it costs you money. But I love me some sweet corn. That's the reason we grow it. And I don't care if it's not my most fertile place, right? It's not my best soil. As long as I get to eat some sweet corn and freeze some so I can have it in the winter. That's my goal always. At Lana Fred, or Ayana Fred, I can't tell if that's an L or an A, asks, thoughts on inoculating peanuts. Looked for inoculant specifically for peanuts recently and didn't really find a lot, and it didn't seem to be a topic people talked about a lot. I actually have not heard of anybody inoculating peanuts. I don't know necessarily why you wouldn't, or necessarily why you would. There's got to be some information out there on that, because any sort of legume, people are going to be looking at rhizobium, whether or not it's necessary or helpful to put rhizobium, certain strands of rhizobium bacteria in there. I don't know. I wouldn't say that it would, like if you, I don't know. I don't want to say it wouldn't hurt. I don't know. You could try some sort of rhizobium inoculant. You could try it like a little trial, but some compost tea or something will probably do the trick pretty well, and then make sure that soil is pretty fertile enough to handle some peanuts. A great crop. I love it. Big fan myself. We're going to stop real quick. You all keep getting your questions in. I'm going to get another ad read going real quick from our friends at Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up, which it is for us, and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. Big shouts to all of our the people that support us there. So make sure to give them a little love when you can, or if their product is something you're interested in, make sure to just reach out to them at least and tell them where you found them. Water break. Love my little Owala, whatever these are, water bottles. They come in handy. I carry this thing everywhere. All right. At Lexington Max, I'm assuming Lexington, Kentucky, so we'll just say you're part of the BBN, asks, when should I inoculate my compost? When I first put it together or during the maturing stage? Also, which inoculant is better? Leaf mold, soil, microbial brew, or some compost from my current pile? When should I inoculate my compost? Probably in the curing stage, right? Like as long as it's not going to add some sort of food safety risk. The curing stage, right? A lot of times in that thermophilic stage is when you're going to burn off a lot of stuff. Like a lot of stuff is going to die in that period, and you're going to get a lot of like your, thermophilic bacteria and stuff. And that's like great. You need that to kill off all those diseases and any weed seeds and that sort of stuff. But then when those die back is when you sort of get that, you get like the more complex microbes that are going to take over the pile. And that would be like fungi, and that would be like, your protozoa and all your, slightly larger microorganisms. And then that is probably when you would want to start adding like some sort of inoculants, some sort of teas and brews and that sort of thing. That's when you would do it. And that way it can sort of colonize that pile. And which one is better? I would say all of them. Diversity for the win, right? Like that is going to be better in literally every situation in farming. Is you don't know necessarily like what's better, with the leaf mold or like what the microbial brew, like what's going to take hold. We're just never going to be smart enough or have the technology to really know. And it's not necessary, right? Like just give it every opportunity to succeed, give it all the different things, and, go from there. And, again, with the food safety thing, like, you wouldn't want to add, I don't know, anything risky like some sort of like fresh manure or something to an already cured compost, just so you're not adding like any weed seed. One, you don't want to add any like, and any risk of, some sort of foodborne pathogen, because it's not getting hot anymore. Once it's at that curing stage, it's kind of done. It's going to chill for a few months at least. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I would say on that one. And I'm just going to assume you're a Cats fan. So yeah. At Jeremy writes, any specific reason why my broccoli and cauliflower plants are huge, but no sign they are going to produce? Southeast Indiana seems to be getting late in the season. I mean, if they're big and they look healthy, then they'll get there. Like, I just noticed I have a few plants like that, in that Lacey Facilia patch, and they look great. And I just the other day saw it starting to button up, or starting to head up. So, that, it just depends on when you planted them. As that, it depends on the temperatures up there and your moisture and everything. And it's going to start, you'll see them. They won't just like chill forever. They'll eventually, start producing something. But it does, it can depend a little bit on if you planted like a sprouting broccoli or something, and it didn't get a proper vernalization, which in that case you may not get ahead, or at least not immediately. And I'm not sure what happens in that situation. But in general, you should be good they should still be fine. It may just take a little while longer. Those crops are slow. They can be very slow, especially in the spring. But we've had decently cold nights here. So if you're in Southeast Indiana, you're probably getting good broccoli weather. I feel like it's actually been kind of perfect. I wish I'd planted more, broccoli, cauliflower, those sorts of things. Cauliflower in particular. I love cauliflower. It's a slow crop and it takes us a while, but I love that crop, and I wish I'd planted some. I didn't. Seeds. Honestly, when I do the seed ratio and how long it's going to be in the ground, and our pest issues here or like pest and disease issues here in humid South, and we don't grow a lot of brassicas because they just don't do that well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm often like, it's not really worth it, but it's always worth it for me to eat some cauliflower, and because it's delicious. But yeah. All right. So good question. All right. So at James Brenza asks, from a no-till perspective, if you're top dressing with compost, likely 1 inch, do you recommend tilling before or after? It seems sort of anti-no-till, but is it necessary to get it mixed in? If you're talking about from the beginning of a garden, and your soil organic matter is low, then I like to work it into the soil. If you're talking about like an established garden and you're just trying to put down a light mulch on top of it, then no, you don't really have to. You can lightly work it into the top of the soil to get like, I don't know, people think, you have to think about this a little bit differently than tillage versus no tillage, because really what we're trying to avoid with tillage is breaking up that rhizome, that the rhizosphere, right? You don't want to destroy that so that you end up with these like, you end up losing a lot of your microbial life and your carbon and all that stuff that's right there, right? But that top like inch or two, to me, it's fair game, and also to an extent. And it's also like if you put a layer of compost up there and you work it into the top inch, you get a really nice tilth, and you also get something that will hold moisture really well. So one of the issues with compost mulching is that it tends to be kind of hydrophobic. So any seeds that you put in that top, in that layer of compost, unless they stay moist, like you just continuously water them, usually with overhead watering, because drip doesn't work as well in compost mulch, it won't germinate that well. Like you'll get poor germination. So if you mix in just that's why the tilter makes so much sense. It's like a rake, but with a battery powered rake. So you get that kind of worked into that top inch. You get some of those like clay particles and stuff that will hold the moisture a little better, and it becomes like almost like a mixed medium. I like that. I think that's really effective. Now the caveat there is the more disturbance and the lower the mulch layer, the more weed pressure you're going to get. So that's kind of the trade-off always with any sort of mulches, is the lower the mulch, the higher the weed pressure. So as you mix in that top layer, even if it's just a little bit of that clay soil, if it's better for your seeds, it's going to be better for weed seeds. So what ultimately results is more cultivation. But I think it doesn't really. To me, if you're talking about starting a garden and it's kind of compacted, or it's low in soil organic matter, then by all means I would just mix it in. But it's a good question. And let's see. Oh, good. I've got lots of questions here. At Danny Daniel Uzin, one of those, writes, "Hi Jesse, would crimping crimson clover and then covering it with 1 to 2 inches of well-rotted horse manure to keep it down be enough to terminate it?" Yes and no. I mean, if you really, really crimp the crimson clover well and you really, really cover it well, then possibly. If it's straight crimson clover, then you have a pretty good chance of it, as long as you time it pretty well right around that flowering period before it starts to seed up. I don't know. I've never tried that specifically, but as long as it gets covered pretty well, you shouldn't have a problem there. As long as it's crimped well and covered well, that would be kind of my take there. Doug Lee asks, "Are we submitting questions?" Yes, you are. Or summiting questions. What is Jesse's secret to making a homemade potting soil? Thanks. Second part would be to making a ground soil bed and what to add. All right. My secret to making a homemade potting soil is I don't do it anymore. And the reason I don't do it anymore is because it's just not as good as what the pros make. It's just like, I've tried so many different mixes. To be clear, it works. Like I can grow seedlings from soil mix that I make at home. It is just not as good. Now, that doesn't mean it won't be as good for everybody, but the trick is you have to find all the different elements. You have to find some sort of moisture retention, some sort of aeration element, compost, and some sort of nutrients. You need like blood meal, fish meal, whatever. You need green sand, maybe rock phosphate. Those you need just like a nice balance of nutrients. For me, and we followed for a while. I probably have it here, like Elliot Coleman's. I don't know, his new organic grower recipe. We followed a version of that for a while. I'm sure it's back there. We followed that for a while, and that's fine. Like that totally worked. We were using some creek sand, which was really, really good and rich, but it also came with weed seeds. So I don't recommend that. that's another thing. Like your compost production has to be really good to make sure that you are not adding weed seeds. I also really like adding some vermicompost in there. If you can add up to like 20% or something, awesome. That will really make it great. One of the big factors is like you need a moisture retainer. So like, that's why so many people use peat moss. But the peat moss we have access to, the majority of us, is like the box store peat moss, which is like the seconds or thirds, like the dregs of the peat industry. So it isn't quite as good. It holds in too much moisture and it can create anaerobic pockets. So my experience is using the stuff from professionals. It makes all the difference. And then you get good uniform trays. I did have my buddy Paul down there at Mountain Roots Farm. Did I get that right? Is it Mountain Roots Farm down there in Tennessee in Knoxville? But he sent me a thing about using just chicken manure and aged wood chips and like letting that mature for a really long time and then use that as potting soil. And he had pretty good luck with that. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. Like that could be a good peat-free option to have like pretty much all the nutrients you'd need, at least for like quicker stuff. I don't know how it would hold up for like, longer season tomatoes and stuff. But that could be there's options there. I thought that was like something that could potentially be scaled. But yeah, he sent me a video. I need to check back in with him and see how that's going. I don't think he's watching this live, but if he is, shouts to Paul. He can let us know how that's going. And yeah, the same thing with making like a ground soil. Like if you're making potting soil for your like a bed, like a raised bed or something. Yeah, you kind of need all the things, right? Like it has to be a perfect, you have the opportunity to make a perfect mix to start your garden. So, a lot of people will just do compost and soil, which is fine, as long as you know where the soil came from. And then maybe mix in some like straw or something below so that you have kind of a lasagna thing going on. I think, that's fine. And then you can mix in some of those amendments as well, like you can get it like actually calculated, send it off to do a soil analysis. But some compost and some soil mix, and then maybe some peat and a little bit of an aeration element. The aeration element's typically like perlite or something like that. Or sand. I mean, that's one of the reasons we used sand was it was like the aeration the creek sand. So yeah, it was like the aeration element, and that helped with germination because you don't want it to be too compact, too tight, or it'll get anaerobic. I don't know. That's kind of, I know that's not great advice, and I just there's so many things you already have to DIY on a farm. I'm like, outsource the stuff that really, really adds value. And I think potting soil adds a ton of value. So for me, it's like worth spending a little extra, especially as a market grower, to make sure that it's going to be good, and I don't have to worry about like I remember we would go out and have to hand weed the soil block trays, and I was like, this is not productive for me. So that to me is like a no-brainer, especially once you compare the quality. But good question. Let's see. At Steven Cardinal asks, hey, Mr. Jesse, I have been meaning to ask about watering and flame weeding. Should you water before or after, I assume? I would think drier is better for killing weeds, but also catching ground on fire. Thank you. It's definitely like, I always say that the flame weeder is the most dangerous tool I own and use occasionally. It's not my favorite thing, but the wet or dry, I would think, in general, it's kind of heavy. So I kind of like doing it on drier soil. So it's not like digging two holes where the wheels are. So there's that. I don't think that it necessarily matters, but you do want like kind of a dry day after they die. It's nice when you go over it and then it's like hot and sunny right on top of them. It can be really hot using that thing on a hot day, but it's the same like cultivating. Like if you generally don't want to cultivate on a cloudy day if you can help it. Like you want to cultivate on a day where it's dry and maybe a little breezy, so that anything you're cultivating that's laying on the surface will just sit there and dry out, dehydrate. But same sort of idea with flame weeding. And you want to hit it early when stuff is barely visible. When it's really, really small. That way you're not missing it, or you've not missed your chance to kill it, especially grasses. Like grasses, they have to be like at germ stage or just past that. Once they turn into like getting some roots down, more often than not, they don't die, or they don't fully die. And yeah, with the catching stuff on fire, just be super careful with, I usually would recommend, especially if you're doing it around, say like mulched pathways, to have a friend around just to be like, behind you and stamping out anytime something catches on fire, because it can happen. Like it, and you shouldn't be doing that out west or something where it's super dry. Like it can be super dangerous. So we'll flame in anywhere I have mulch. Like I'm very, very conscious of like not catching that on fire, because you don't want to like turn around and see like your path is on fire, your pants are on fire like that. It truly could happen, and it's dangerous. So yeah, it's good to be cautious. I'm glad you are thinking of that. Real quick drink here. All right. Gosh, 36 minutes in. Look at us. All right. At Vital Roots Farm asks, good morning. Good morning. I've always started seeds in my house on mats under lights. I now have a tunnel to start them in. Are there differences starting seeds in those two places? Your tunnel's going to get colder. So, yeah, I mean, the inconsistency can be a little frustrating. So you want to think of ways to try and minimize that, which would be like, anytime we're starting on mats, in the like early spring, we'll make sure to stack stuff on top of it so it kind of holds in that humidity, holds in that heat a little bit better, especially on cooler nights. Yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest difference is your temperature fluctuations are going to, on the other side of that, like your temperature fluctuations will go a lot. So like on a really sunny, hot day, you don't want your lettuce in there because it's not going to germinate as well. So you have to be very conscious of like, where's my lettuce? Where's, versus like, where are my tomatoes? Are my tomatoes staying warm enough? Is my lettuce getting too hot? Yeah, and you got to go back and forth and be really, really conscious of those things. So it's a little bit more hands-on, but it's nice. I mean, it's hands-on in the sense that like you just have to be conscious of those things, but it's less hands-on in the sense that you don't have to move stuff out to your greenhouse after it germinated, which is great. So yeah, I mean, there's that. But I hope that's helpful. Yeah. Congrats on getting an outdoor space. That's fun. Let's see. At Brenton Walters asks, but enough about farming. How excited are you for Brighton and European soccer next season? Oh my gosh, I don't want to curse it. If you've noticed, I haven't been talking a lot about Brighton for these last few weeks because like they're in contention to get some European soccer. And I'm like, we have 2 more games. And if we can get like 4 points out of those games, I think we get some European soccer. I mean, if we can get 6 points, maybe we even get into the Champions League. Just not cursing it. So I'm just going to assume I'm happy. We've had a good season, had fun. I hope everybody's enjoying your Brighton Seagulls. They're the official team of no-till market gardeners in the Premier League. I think that's fact. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying soccer right now, but I'm like trying to stay cool about it, even though I'm not really good at staying cool. But yes, appreciate that question. At Aussie Fuss asked, placed 3 potatoes behind my pumpkin and melon patch. How serious is the wilt risk? 6B, Missouri. Placed 3 potatoes behind my pumpkin and melon patch. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you mean. Like if you're talking about wilt on the pumpkin and melons, or you're talking about wilt on the potatoes, I would think there's no real risk there. Cucurbits and Solanaceae, they're fine as far as I know. Like I've never run into any issues combining those 2 families, or growing them, after each other, if that's what you're talking about. But yeah, I don't see any major concerns there. As long as the soil's healthy and it's getting good sunlight and, it's not overly moist, it's got to have good drainage. All those things are important. But yeah, I don't see any, specific risks from that combination. At Trill 000 asks, do you clear out the greenhouse during the hot summer? Do you use cover crops indoors to help regenerate the potting mix used indoors? Do you clear out the greenhouse during the hot summer? No, actually I use it. So basically what I do is I take like the end walls and I just take them off. So it becomes like almost like a half shade house, right? Like that plastic ends up being more like shade than plastic. It doesn't hold in quite as much heat because it's not very long. It's like 30 feet, maybe less, 25, 30 feet. The air travels really well through there, and I can even open the sides if I need be just to get airflow through there. But yeah, it ends up staying relatively cool. Actually, it's like cooler in our greenhouse in the summer than it is outside of our greenhouse. Now with the high tunnels, I do have to open the sides really well and open the top vent. So like we have that ridge vent. So I'll open that up, but otherwise now it's good. And then the other part of that question, do you use cover crops indoors to help regenerate the potting mix used indoors? No. I mean, I guess you could, like if you were using, I've always thought like you could do that with something like your microgreens, like your wasted microgreen material. You could put that in trays and then, maybe rejuvenate it somehow and then just sort of mix it all together and let it recompost. I don't know how well that would work or if it would even be a good idea, but I thought you could maybe do something like that and then maybe mix it in, use it as a top dressing, if not, reuse it for microgreens or something. But I think for most of that stuff, you really want to, like, once you use it for microgreens, you don't want to transfer that disease if there was any risk there. So usually that would just go onto the beds or out into the compost pile. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. At Simply Spunky Peaches asks, as a beginner gardener, I bought mulching compost and attempted to grow into it with mixed results. How would you suggest having healthier plants? Yeah, I mean, compost is complicated because it's, I think there's been this idea that, like, just put the compost over the top and then, plant into that. And that's fine, but some mulching compost especially are so mulchy that they just don't retain moisture very well. So there's that part. It's like it's not retaining moisture very well, so that makes it complicated because plants need moisture. So if you've got 6 inches here and you put the plant here and then it dries out, like, those roots are never going to have time necessarily to get down into the native soil where they're honestly going to get a lot of their nutrients. So that's part one, is that the moisture issue is complicated. So that's why sometimes I recommend just, like, especially in the beginning, like tilting it in with that little bit of like that soil right at the top, just getting that, just a little bit of that mixed medium just to add those like clay particles. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the native soil. Like, so if you, if you put a bunch of compost down over like heavy clay or something, or really, really poorly draining soil, and those roots grow really well at first, like it does stay moist enough, especially in the spring, and it's good to go. And then those roots get down to like anaerobic clay, hard compacted clay, like the plant's just not going to do well. So, that's like the other side of things, is it's not a guarantee. And you really do have to work on that native soil before you put the like mulching compost over top. If you can, if it's like compacted like that. If it's not, like if it's good soil and it seems like it's pretty loose, or you're working in sandy, sort of loamy soil, then you should be good to go. And sometimes it just takes a year. Sometimes there's just like a period of time where stuff doesn't produce as well. Also, there's other factors. I mean, there's just general growing factors of like, when did you plant? Did you water it in well enough? Was it the heat of the summer? Was it, was it too cold outside still? Was it, moisture, all those things. So lots of different variables potentially there. So yeah, good question. Good luck with the garden. I hope it goes a little bit better. At Coldini writes, great to hear some compost talk. Been struggling with finding some good stuff, especially for starting new garden beds. Any tips for starting new beds that have no compaction without compost or just a tea? Yeah, I mean, preferably you'd have some amount of compost, but I get that. Like, start them like you would any other garden. Like, let's say, all right, let me think about this. So if you had no compost and you have you don't really have any access to any other mulches, then you would start it like you'd start any other garden. I would go with like a permanent bed system, because then you can really work on the compaction. I would try to get some amount of compost, because that's really what's going to keep your, soil from hardening up and stuff. Do a soil test, get it, if they recommend any amendments, get all that worked in at first. Build those beds, and then just like really, really focus on keeping any sort of tillage very, very minimal. Add your good soil amendments. Like I'm talking an inch or two at the top if you need to, just to get you good seed bed. Broad fork as you can if you need to. And then, yeah, I mean, you'd follow something more along the lines of like what, people like J.M. Fortier or like Connor Crickmore, that sort of like permanent bed system. Follow something more along the lines of that, but they do still use a lot of compost. So it's kind of hard to get that sort of system working without any compost or without any mulches. But you can get creative. I mean, I use a number of different combinations of techniques here, because I recognize what the situation is, if it's compacted, if it's not compacted, if it needs soil organic matter, if it doesn't, what the crop is going in and all that stuff, because I've been doing this for 18 or 17 years. So, yeah, I mean that, as you get more experience, you'll learn where it matters and where it doesn't. And then you'll figure out ways to mulch using cover crops. You'll figure out that you have a straw supplier nearby, or you have, wood chips that you can allow to just kind of break down and decompose. And then you can use that as a mulch or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely options out there and I would look for those, but the compost makes a big difference in soil tilth, in, fertility, in moisture retention, and all the things. Because once you take the soil organic matter and the organic matter off the top and out of the soil, then you end up with like really difficult conditions that will become compacted and will not be as productive. And, you'll have a lot more weed competition. You'll have a lot more cultivation to do. So, yeah, I mean, teas and that sort of stuff can help certainly for the fertility, but that's more like once the plants are established, less so like as you're planting something. But they can help. I mean, if that's what you have, use what you've got and then just slowly, try and work up to a more ideal situation there. But yeah, I think that's it's possible for sure. At James Webb, what's up, James, asks, hey, Jesse, in one of your videos, you had mentioned about sharing a copy of your crop plan in order for beginning farmers to get an idea of the intensity. Is that something that you would still be willing to share with us? Well, I would. The problem is, like, I don't really have like a good shareable version of it that would make any sense to anybody but me. And I don't like, a lot of people have like, I don't know, just like they have like all their beds laid out and then all the different things and how long they last and replant in July. And I don't do it that way. And I haven't done like a normal crop plan in a long time because I haven't needed to, because we're not doing the same we're not doing like a CSA. I don't have to worry about certain, rotations like I used to, because I'm doing just a handful of crops in a way that I wasn't before. Like when you're doing a CSA and you're doing 70 different crops, that stuff really matters. But I'll see if I have something I can share. I'm making no promises though, because it honestly like probably isn't even entirely applicable anymore. But it's something that I just, those things can be pretty easily designed, and there are lots of people that have them online. So I would find somebody in your area that just does something, that does have a good one. But yeah, for me, I don't know that it would be that helpful, but I'll look and see if I have some sort of older crop plan that would make a little bit more sense. That's like more of a shareable version. Mine are like weird spreadsheets that I don't know that would make any sense to anybody, but I could try. I'll look at it. But yeah, good question, James. Let me see. At Carl Boss asks, how has your burlap been? I'm getting some for my pathways, but I'm curious on how it has been so far using it as a mulch. Yeah, good question. I mean, for now it's working. It blocks the weeds pretty well. It is even though mine is like the thinner version, I'd like a thicker version of it, but it blocks the weeds fine. And when it doesn't, I just kind of pop it up, but it's pretty preliminary still. Like it's only been down under our squash for like a month. Seems fine. Stuff does want to grow through it. But I just like pop it up and then, that's fine. And then the squash is slowly taking it over. I think I'll probably have squash in like a couple weeks. So, that plant is so big, their yellow squash and our zucchini, those will take over for the most part and do a lot of the weeding for me, just blocking out the weeds. So far so good. I think I realized the other day that part of the reason I don't use, any sort of landscape fabric and that sort of stuff is that I just hate messing with it. And it doesn't change because it's burlap. I just don't like messing with it. I don't like planting into little holes inside of fabric. I don't like that it cuts off my ability to interplant on the sides without like moving it out of the way. I like the moisture retention, but my soil doesn't struggle with that so much. Like we're heavy clay. So like moisture retention isn't always really our issue. And we have, good soil organic matter in a lot of those places because I use cover cropping and stuff. So I think yes, but I'm more excited to use it as like shade cloth, to get rid of that, to start maybe moving away from that. I'm excited. So less as a weed mat. I'm excited for other things that involve it, or maybe even just like germinating seeds, putting it down on a bed, letting seeds germinate, like, even stale seed bedding if I wanted to, but something like carrots or whatever. I had good luck doing that. But less so as a weed suppressant. I just don't think it's going to be something I want to mess with, because stuff is going to want to grow through it, and I'm not going to have the time to always keep up with it. So, but I think like there are places for it. I'd like it to replace, maybe some frost protection, and some shade cloth. And I think that would be, and then some weed seed germination. If I could get those three things, great. Like that would be cool. I know it won't protect from frost quite the same or quite as low. So I'd have to be careful about that. But like a light frost, if I threw that over some, squash plants or whatever, then I expect it would be effective, just to hold in enough temperature at like 36 degrees to keep it from getting like a heavy frost or a light frost. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at on that. Let's see, I've got about 10 more minutes. I'm going to read the last ad read, and then we'll get to a few more questions. This one is from our friends at Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. With their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. That's very cool. Grown By helps you to put your best food forward. Like that. And as a dad, I appreciate the pun. Schedule a demo today at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. Yeah, appreciate them. Also appreciate that SNAP shout out. That help. That's super helpful. Let me get back to you all. Where did you go? There we are. All right, so let's see. I've got at least time for a few more here. All right. At James Brenza asks, we've been leaning into setting up a high tunnel with ground air heat transfer for year-round growing. It seems like a rare, poorly understood approach. Are we missing some of the problems with it? I think it just has to be really, really engineered well for any sort of like climate battery, that sort of thing. Like it just has to be engineered really well, because you can end up not storing enough heat, or you can end up losing some of the heat. You can end up wasting the electricity. I think as long as it's designed well, it can do well, but it's also expensive to install it, right? Like if you're wondering why more people don't do it, it's like a high tunnel itself is already pretty expensive. And then, you've got all this other stuff to worry about. So like it's financially a little bit more difficult. I think it would be cool if that got folded into like the NRCS program that we have here in the United States, where you can basically you could for a while. I don't know what the state of it is now, but you could get like basically a tunnel paid for, which is awesome. But if they were like, we'll pay for your tunnel and we'll also like cost share on, some sort of in-ground heating, like some sort of ground, solar battery or whatever, or climate battery, that would be awesome. Like, I think that would really up the game in being able to grow over the winter, or grow like, fruits and stuff, in tunnels that, that we can't really do here in Kentucky quite the same. So yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think there's also maybe not enough models out there yet to know what all the potential is or what all the possibilities are, but there's certainly like a lot of room to grow there for sure. No pun intended, but yeah, I love that. Yetis are cool. Okay, awesome. Hi, Jesse, Sam from Florida. Hi, Sam. Do you think in a non-optimal world, tilthing or tarping for a short time, like a week, would be better for flipping a bed to preserve soil health? Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. Like if you're talking about when you say tilthing or tarping, I'm assuming you mean like you'd clear the bed, like mow it or something, and then like tilt it and then let it chill for a week, and then you'd rake it off and then plant it maybe, or something like that. With the tarping, I mean, yeah, you want to reduce the amount of time between crops. Like if I always say, like if the soil's not being fed, it's feeding on itself, right? So like if it's not having photosynthesis going into the soil, then it's going to start eating whatever carbons and whatever else is in there. So ideally you go from one to the next as fast as you can, but that doesn't always work out that way. And like you're in Florida, so it's probably pretty hot. Like you could probably do clear a bed of something I can't, like even like kale or something. You could probably do that under tarp in a week. Whereas for me, it's a little bit more complicated, because it's not going to die as readily under a tarp here as it will in hot Florida. So yeah, I mean, I think, I'm fine with it. I think as long as you're trying to keep it planted as much as possible, and replanted as quickly as possible, then that's fine. I mean, do what makes the most sense for you. And then, as long as you're thinking about and working towards good soil health, I think you'll get there. And you may find oh, that wasn't fast enough, or oh, I can do it faster if I do, if I mow it and then cover it, I only need 2 days, and then I can pull it off and I can pretty much plant it because it's, it's hot enough there and it's sunny enough there that maybe that it works out. But you may find certain weeks, if it rains too much, that it doesn't break down quite as fast. You may have to wait for a little while. At Aliyah Bushiwa, I hope I said that right, asks, do you use charcoal in your garden? If yes, how do you activate it? And do you apply it in the no-till garden? I don't use charcoal necessarily. I think I had a question about this. Did I already do this one? I think it's coming up tomorrow, maybe, about charcoal in the garden. But yeah, let me talk about that one tomorrow a little bit more, because I think that I'm almost certain it's coming up tomorrow on my questions. But I don't really use charcoal, right? Like I would use a little bit. If I had charcoal, it's fine. It's not as long lasting as like biochar, but you can put it in the compost pile and inoculate it that way, or put it in like a compost tea or something. But generally, like biochar and charcoal are two different things. So charcoal just isn't as long lasting as biochar. It's done at a hotter temperature. It's done at a lower temperature, so it's not quite as stable. And it doesn't, you don't press out the oxygen. So basically, like, it just doesn't, it's not as like long of a lasting carbon, but it's still carbon, and you can inoculate it in your compost pile or something, or just mix it with, like, put a bunch in a bucket with some water and some compost and just let it like fill up for a couple days, and then, dump that water out, and then, you do that way. That would probably do it for the most part. And then you can add that to your compost and then add it to your garden or something. I think that's fine. But yeah, no, it's a good question. And like I said, I think I will tackle that more on the show tomorrow. If it's not tomorrow, then it would be next week, but I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow. I'd have to double check. At XX writes, how's the rice coming, mate? And I'm in South Ontario thinking about trying rice. So far, so good. I love the way it looks. It's just like a little grass. And it kind of freaks me out a little bit because it looks like a weed, because I don't grow a lot of grasses, just like, in perfect rows like that. But yeah, so far, so good. I'm excited. I'm ready to see how much one bed of rice can get me. It'll probably be like, like one or two pots maybe. That would be great. I'd be happy with that. One of them is like an arborio rice. So a little risotto. That could be fun. I'm excited to try that. But yeah, I'll keep you all updated on that one for sure. And then I'm going to do one last one, and then we will get out of here. I think I skipped one. Okay, here's one. Wait a second. I want to just make sure I get at least one from everybody here. All right. At Danny Luzin asks, or Danny Luzin? Not sure. Have you played around with chickpeas as a companion plant for taller stuff like tomatoes, or as a cover crop? Not chickpeas so much, but I don't see why not. Like, it's just not come up for me. But I don't necessarily see why not. The only thing is you're probably going to get them flowering before like tomatoes would be done, or like, something like tomatoes, corn or something, right? So you'd want to plant them a little bit later. And then once that crop is done, then obviously you can just let it all take over, and then you can mow it all down. But as a cover crop, sure. If you have a good line on some chickpeas, I don't see why not. I don't know how fast growing they are. I've never grown chickpeas. Thing with cover crops, like if you're going to use an unusual thing for cover crops, what was the one we were talking? Oh, peanuts. Like that was one that came up the other day. And I was like, it's all well and good, but peanuts are slow. So like it doesn't make a great cover crop, because stuff will outcompete it pretty well. So if you had a fast growing legume like that, like chickpeas, I've used mung beans. I don't know why that's not a bigger cover crop, because you can get the seeds for super cheap, right? Like for sprouting. So yeah, I'm all about stuff like that. But yeah, it's worth a try. And if you have a bunch of chickpeas, I say go for it. Let's see. I'm going to. I think otherwise, you all, thank you so much for coming to the live. I could not say enough. Like, you all are just so amazing. These questions have been super fun. Double shouts to the Brighton question. Also, you all, just say thank you to Mike in the show threads. Otherwise, don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and also just hanging out in the chat. And and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world, including delivering right now. She's out on deliveries. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. This is where I'd usually sip my tea, but I didn't bring tea today. I just brought water. Anyway, and also you can't hear the music. I don't know why I said that. Maybe I'll play the theme song on our way out. But you can pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at no-till-growers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. That really is the lifeblood of the show, so we really appreciate it. But where, at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, we will usually shout you out on the show. We'll do a story. We'll do all the things. Don't do that on lives, but we will do that tomorrow if we get a sign up or two. So thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate it. We'll send it out. Bye.